To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to Rephetic, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history. Welcome to the Rephetic podcast. Today we have Robelle Degner. Hi, Robelle.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Pretty good, I guess, for my age group. I'm about to turn 54. So,
Well, I just hit 70, so I'm a little bit ahead of you.
a little bit. That's a lot ahead of me.
Uh-huh.
16 years. Anyway,
Yep.
thank you for joining us. And then let me first just apologize to listeners because we basically took a 9-month break from the podcast, and then we're restarting ahead of shipping books, probably within a couple of months. So the book's on pre-sale. If anybody wants to go and pre-order, they can. So that's that. Welcome, though. Did you listen to some of the earlier podcasts with like Sister
I sure
Jen?
did. Yep, I believe I listened to all of them. Were there 8 in total?
No, well, I think there, but I think there's some other videos. So mine is
Okay.
3, and there might be like 10 actual
Okay.
podcasts, and then there's a couple topical discussions with my friend Joe about
Okay. I might have missed a couple then.
yeah. Well,
Yep.
nobody has that much time. So, well, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are in the UP, huh?
I am in the UP, and we're having better weather up here than the southern and the middle part of the country
Yeah,
this year.
yeah,
Yeah, we've had snow twice, which normally we have at least 62 inches right now. We had 3 inches in mid-February and it melted the next day.
hmm
We had about 3 inches last week and it melted within 2 days.
yeah,
And we're back up into the 50s, which is unheard of. I mean, they're breaking all kinds of records up here.
yeah. And so, in your 70 years, have you lived all that in
Right.
the UP?
Right. Yep.
Have you ever seen anything like this mild winter?
Never in all my years,
Right.
never.
I asked around when I was in Marquette a few weeks ago, and
Yeah.
nobody has ever seen such a mild February or January. It's really crazy. So anyway,
It's very crazy. I really have been enjoying it because I can keep up my active lifestyle. However, I had a season's pass for downhill skiing that I
right.
have not used.
Oh goodness, yeah, that's crazy. You got to have the
Yeah.
snow, eh?
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
So aside from like our interactions, particularly like when did my mom pass away? Was it been 10 years, 11, 12?
She passed away in November of 2015.
Oh, okay. So
So,
that's up to 9 years, eh?
yep, we're coming up on 9 years.
Okay, okay.
And the reason I remember is I lost my mom in July of that year.
Right.
And while I was in the process of sitting with my mom, your mom fell and broke a hip
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
wound up in the hospital.
And
So,
I'm not happy to say. Now, you know the details. I was there. I was
oh, no,
staying
I
at her
didn't know
place.
that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm to blame. But anyway, I was there for that. But she got up in the middle of the night. She's got to go to the bathroom. She decides to do it without her walker. And she
Yep.
fell. And, I,
But here's the thing
yeah.
about that, Dave. Don't beat yourself up
No,
too much
I'm
because
not.
your
I'm
mom
not.
had very frail bones, and sometimes they can't tell if the person fell because their hip broke
Oh,
and down
right.
they went,
Or if it broke while they
or
fell. Yeah.
right,
Oh my
right.
goodness. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah. And again, we're gonna. It's just again relative to my mom, you, and Julie were like the three musketeers, right? You guys came to my one and only wedding, I think. Julie and my mom throwing rolls everywhere.
Yes, yes, I remember. Oh, you couldn't take that girl any place. She liked to
Julie?
throw
Oh,
food.
oh,
Oh my goodness. She threw food one time when we were at a powwow and we went out to dinner, and I don't know if you remember Jim Williams. He's passed on now, but he was like a very strong spiritual elder in our community,
Uh-huh.
and a very revered teacher. Well, Julie threw a roll and hit him in the back of the head.
Oh, what? Was he
And
upset? Or what happened?
he was so embarrassed, and he turned around and he said, "I'm never coming out to dinner with you again."
Oh, goodness, goodness. The most
So, and he
level-headed
never
guy.
did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Oh
what
gosh.
a spirit of these people, huh? My mom and Julie and you know, I mean,
Yeah,
so you don't get the whole thing without the individual participants, right?
that's true. That is very true. And we went to ceremonies together, and I first met your mom through Julie at a women's retreat up at Lac Vieux des Old Indian Village.
Right.
And we went into a sweat lodge,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just starting out where I was doing women's ceremonies. And in that lodge, after we got done, your mom came over and she passed me tobacco and she said, "I know that you have my name for me." And
Oh,
I was like, "I don't give names, I
right,
don't do
right.
that. No, no." But in the lodge, I had seen her name, but
Oh,
I didn't feel qualified or at a place in my spiritual walk where I was comfortable with that.
yeah.
So I said, "It's not personal. I don't want you to think it's personal. I just am not there,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
And
did
so then
she got it soon thereafter?
well, yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
talked to Jim about it and I told him the scenario that I saw it and she asked and I said no.
Oh, right.
And, and he said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Because I don't feel like, you
Yeah,
know,
interjecting
uh,
into that process. Sure. Yeah,
yeah."
yeah. It's
So he
okay.
told me, he said, "Okay, sit back and wait. If it's meant to be, she's going to ask you again."
Oh,
So months went by and we had ceremony again. And she came up and she said, "I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you've got my name
oh.
and I really need it."
Whoa, she put the
So
screws to you, huh?
yeah, so we did go ahead and, of course, had a ceremony, and I swore her to secrecy. Do not tell anybody I gave you a name.
Why? No, why wouldn't Jim give it to her or whatever?
Well,
Why was it?
because she saw in the lodge that I had it, and
Oh,
I saw it in the lodge,
oh, oh.
and so that's why he didn't jump in the middle.
Yeah, just let it
You know.
unfold naturally. Hey?
Yep. So it all worked out good, and life went by. But I
Yeah,
have to tell you, Dave, I started out, I'm going to give you a little scenario of my spirituality.
sure. And to just tell us her name, tell us her tribal name.
Her name was Manitou Natawash. She was the spirit of the soaring eagle. And I believe you have an affinity with eagles,
Yeah, well, I didn't ask for it, you know,
right?
so it
Yeah.
just came. So,
Well, there it is.
and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, especially people that live in mid-America. You know,
Yeah.
here at the bend, the river bend at Alton, Illinois, we're close to the confluence of the Missouri. You know,
Mm-hmm.
as much ice as there is up there, it keeps pushing the birds south. No,
Yeah.
or this is probably the worst year, but anyway, I went once this year, but it's right here. There's 2 million people in this metro St. Louis area, and nobody goes to see the Eagles. It's just
Oh my God.
it boggles my mind. But and I want to you can talk about your spirituality, but just for reference, last year, and I might have already told this story, but we pulled up on Christmas Eve, my sons and my ex and myself, or maybe it was just my youngest son. But anyway, there's 100 birds below the dam when you would be lucky to see 6 or 8 or 10. There's a
Oh, wow.
there's 100 at the head of this cold snap, And the next day there was half as many, and the next day there was half as many as that. But it was, to this day, there's about 3 things that I've seen in the wild which just reduced me to tears, and that was one of them. Anyway,
Wow.
go ahead. The other one was the howling wolves that we experienced out at Cawaden Lake. Did I ever tell you that story?
Oh, no, but I bet you it was a spiritual experience.
Oh my! It was so amazing, and I could tell it to you real quick. And then
Yep.
the third one was rowing a boat by myself on a new moon on Craig Lake. Okay, in
Mm,
the middle of the night, I had taken Jen and Chad back to the boat launch,
yes.
and then I was rowing back to the campsite. Oh, there's another one too. Anyway, I'm sorry. There's another Craig Lake one. But listen, I'm rowing, and if you lose the tree line, especially on a new moon, super clear night, I felt
Yeah.
I'm on a flagpole jutted into the middle of the Milky Way galaxy. Okay?
Oh, wow.
If you
Wow.
if you lose the tree line or any reference to the fact that you're on the planet,
Yes.
you're not on the planet. You are right in the middle of 360-degree dome space of the universe, and it
Oh,
just just it's so comforting. It's so amazing, astounding. Let's call it ineffable, right? Because
yeah.
there's no words to tell you about that experience, you know. Anyway, and then the other
That's
one, super
awesome.
super quick, was the middle of the night. We were listening to the jet stream 5 miles above us. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Perfect silence on a little island in the middle of the Craig Lake. This
Wow.
this howling wind woke me out of a dead sleep in a tent. All right, and it woke up my
Um,
brother also. I look out the tent window. There's not a leaf blowing nowhere. With this little island, there's no frogs, there's no crickets, there's no nothing on this island, right?
right.
And I'm listening to this wind, and I'm holding my breath to listen to this howling wind. And the next morning, I was like, what in the hell could that have been? And the only answer is it's the jet stream 5, 6 miles straight above us.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Like when you can hear
Yeah.
a train 10 miles away, right?
Yes.
When it's that quiet, it was that quiet. And the jet stream must have
That's
been. Yes,
amazing.
yes, yes. So, and at
Mm.
what are we talking? What's the UP? 400 feet above sea level or something? 450,
You
something like that.
know, I don't know the statistics on that, and I've lived here my whole life. I better check it out.
Yeah, no big deal. But then the other one, real quick. So Jen and myself, my ex, and my 2 sons were on Cawaden Lake. You know what the campgrounds are over there? There's 3 of them. We hear this
Uh,
scout. We hear this scout wolf howling over near that side of the lake. Once, then twice. We stop rowing. It's right about almost dark. The sun has been down probably 15 minutes or something,
yeah.
and the lake is glass calm. We're rowing. This is timeless, right? This doesn't
Oh,
matter if it's 1492 or
yeah.
2024, right?
Mystical.
Completely mystical, plugged in, present, right?
Yep.
So we hear the scout wolf first time, second time, he howls. The other side of the lake, the whole pack starts howling.
Oh,
Listen,
wow.
we're dead stopped on the water, canoe, 2 kayaks. Each one
Mm.
of us is just mesmerized by this state that we're in, right?
Wow. Did you
Unbelievable.
throw back your head and howl?
No, we didn't. Listen, I grabbed my phone and I hit voice record as quick as I could,
Oh,
and we got some of it on voice recording. But anyway,
oh,
those are the highlights of all my outdoor experiences, other than my 50-inch muskies and all that. But listen, speaking of nature, tell me tell me some of your stories if you want. But the sweat lodge of my mom, her getting her name. you Three Musketeers, just such treasured memories, and the relationship that you gals had.
Yes.
So
Yes.
tell me some stories, and tell me how do we even relate to spirit, right?
Right. Well, that's why I want to share my journey, because it
Sure.
is a weird journey and I don't fit in anybody's pigeonhole. I'm just going to say that.
Good for you.
I was born and raised Catholic, and about 4 years old, I was sitting in back of the Catholic Church in Gastra, and they were having a first communion service, and the bishop was talking about how the little boys and girls were going to receive Jesus today. And I remember this. I mean, this is vivid. This is vivid. I said, "Oh, Jesus, I want you to come into my heart, and please don't ever leave me." So that was a little child's prayer.
Yeah.
Life goes on. I went through, growing up Catholic, and I call myself now a recovering Catholic.
Yeah.
But all of that paves a way, and makes me do some soul work, because things happened. And then Bob and I were married in 1972, and he also grew up Catholic, but he did not want to go to the Catholic Church. Right. Even though we were married in the Catholic Church. So that began our exploration with fundamentalism. And I can tell you, we went from one church to another over a period of probably 10 or 15 years. And I don't regret any of it. We grew, we learned, but what happened was we became less enthralled with organized religion and more enthralled in our personal faith. And so that was a good thing. But at that time, we had quit going to any churches, and the door opened finally, because I was working in Indian country, for me to start going to ceremonies.
Yeah.
And by then I was probably 26 years old. But I can tell you, growing up, I always had a deep, deep walk with my Creator. And I would go sit on a rock when the thunder and lightning was coming.
Yeah.
And I'd be singing away, and my mom would be screaming out the back door, "Get off that rock! You're going to get killed." And the big joke in our family was I was the only Indian in the family, because
Right.
I was the only one who identified with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's mainly my journey. But I want to tell you one funny anecdote. Don't ever go to a Baptist church and tell them you got saved in the back of the Catholic Church at 4 years old.
Right. Right.
Because it doesn't go over well.
Yeah.
But my point in dancing around this whole scenario is the fact that I believe in a supreme creator. And I believe that supreme creator made everything that is.
Yeah.
And in that supreme creator's eyes, there is no distinction between races, genders, sexes, identification, heterosexuality, homosexuality.
Right.
If we are all made in the image and likeness of that creator, and that creator blew the breath of life into everyone and everything that is alive on this planet, don't we have a moral obligation to learn about one another? And it's okay to be different,
Sure.
but we don't have to hate on each other.
Yeah.
We can still have mutual respect. So that's a little bit about my spiritual journey, and I'm, like I said, a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a couple questions about that. So
Sure.
First of all, do you? And I guess I'm more of a pantheist as well. Like
Yes.
for example, so when you say creator, are you talking about a supernatural human-like being, or you're talking about nature, Mother Earth, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, but I really do believe there had to be a genius behind all of this.
Okay.
And
Okay.
in the Ojibwe teaching, that genius made everything that is, including every little blade of grass, every little ant, every little mosquito, and that the teaching is that we are all part of that web of life.
Hmm.
And what we choose to do to that web affects all of us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so we need to be very careful about how we treat one another, how we treat nature, how we treat the animal kingdom,
Yeah.
you know? And we don't worship animals or trees or birds, but we do recognize that there is a spirit
Hmm.
in everything, and we need to respect that.
Yeah. And then
So it kind
also,
of goes with pantheism,
yeah.
doesn't it? I mean,
Well,
that's
I
kind
think
of
so. I think so. And then it's like, well, how do I fit into this whole schema of the natural spirituality, right? And then,
right.
but what's not in there is like exceptionalism and I'm better than you or you're wrong
Correct.
and I'm right. Okay, so that stuff's not in there. And so,
Correct.
do you think that is like the source of division and things like this? All the rest of it.
Well, I think that sometimes with particularly with I don't want to poke a stick at anybody, but seriously, in my journey through all the different various churches,
Hmm.
there's a certain arrogance that runs in denominations where they think that they have only the purest truth,
Yeah.
and the guy down the street is missing the mark.
Right. Right.
And I believe, in studying, I've studied extensively Jesus' teachings, and that is not what he ever taught. He never poked a stick at anybody. He never organized a religion. He came to teach us how to live in harmony with all the things of creation
Yeah.
and with one another. And all he ever said, you are to love the Lord your God, which in my estimation, in my belief, is the creator and maker of all things, the breath giver.
Yeah.
You are to love your maker with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your mind. And the next best one is to love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
So the theme that Christ talked about was respect and love. And sometimes I see within denominations and within people in particular a certain amount of, I'll see your spirituality and I'll raise you one
All right.
because mine is the only answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, that's a real kind of a false face, if I can say it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then it also, even as we talk through this stuff too, again, kind of our thematic approach is to look at these perennial questions, right? Who am I?
Yes.
Where am I? How did I get here? And
Yep.
even more importantly is how do we plot a reasonable and wise course into the rest of the day or into tomorrow, right?
Yes.
So yeah. So
And to have the ability to say, well, I don't quite see it that way, and that's not the way I choose to walk.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's okay. We each have to work that out.
Yeah. And so I describe that in a particular way, which is, so supposing we're sitting around the campfire or you're in ceremony or at the church or whatever the case is, right? So
Correct.
we each individually and subjectively have our experience of this, let's call it transcendental or luminous, right?
Right?
Like we each have our own subjective experience of that.
Correct.
Well, it seems like the error is to try to quantify objectively my spiritual experience and understanding and interaction in the world, quantify it, and then suggest that someone else's subjective spiritual experience should be anything mirroring mine, right?
Absolutely. I totally
Okay.
agree with
Okay.
you. And even if you're coming from a Christian perspective, the Bible itself will tell you to work out your own salvation
Yeah,
with
yeah,
fear
yeah,
and
yeah.
trembling.
And know no two people can read a text of anything and actually it has the identical meaning to them. Okay, so
Absolutely.
okay, so
No two people can walk side by side
and
on the
see the
lakeshore and
same
have the
view,
same.
right?
Right.
Exactly. This is so fundamentally simple, right? So,
Yes.
well, anyway, and we'll continue. But my estimation, what I've arrived at, right, through my walk and my looking and research and confronting my own ideas, is like
Right.
here's this subjective experience, the problems or division or othering people or one-upping people in the spiritual realm or whatever. It stems from trying to make an objective list of what spirituality ought to be or must
Yes.
be,
Yes.
right? Or,
Yeah.
you must do
Or
this.
how they
Yeah.
perceive it to be.
Sure, right. But okay, so here's what happens at the campfire, right? You come back from the day or in ceremony, a sweat lodge or in church or whatever, is hey, tell me about your week or tell me about
Yes.
your day. Each person shares subjectively about their experience, right?
Correct.
Nobody ever says, here's my subjective experience. That's what you ought to be having, right? Nobody says that.
No,
Okay,
because
but
it's not accurate.
it's ridiculous. But that's what
Yeah.
that's the byproduct of you put it down in writing and it becomes doctrine. And then it becomes,
Correct.
here's what you ought to do. You go from is to ought, et cetera, right? So,
Right.
but you would never do that sitting with a friend. I would never in a billion years try to tell you anything about your subjective human experience of the spiritual.
Correct.
I would never do that, right?
Yeah.
So, but what we would do naturally is you share yours, I share mine, and then we can learn from each other. And then
Yes.
and then in community also, it's like, well, hey, you know what? I haven't been through that experience, but talk to Robelle. Or I haven't
Yes.
been through that experience, but talk to this person. They have, right?
Correct.
And then the subjective becomes shared. It becomes community. It's all born of spirit and, let's say, wholesome connection, whatever.
Yes.
Peace, tranquility, right? Harmony. All of the stuff, this stuff exists in nature. But anyhow,
Yeah.
okay, I digress.
No, you're making an excellent point because you'll never see Native people proselytizing.
Right.
You'll never see Native people trying to draw people away from their church or their Christian faith or their Muslim faith or whatever their faith is. You will never see a Native person trying to pull that person.
Conversions, right.
Conversion,
Yeah.
pull them away from their faith and say, now I'm going to replace your faith with my faith. Which it comes down to respect,
Yeah. Well,
and
okay.
to just honor one another, honor the sacred in each other.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's another element there too, is you came to your spiritual understanding through your own subjective path, right?
Absolutely.
And each
in a roundabout way that doesn't fit anybody's category.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. But every person does that themselves. So it's just folly to say to someone else, well, here's how I came to believe in this or this or this.
Yeah.
And yours could mirror mine. Well, there's no way it could mirror any of your path, right? This is
Correct.
Yeah. So it's all uniquely individual and subjective. But here's anyway. Let me just throw this out, and then you can talk more about just your story. But what is objective, right? What is objective is that we're on a living planet. There's 8 billion of us, right?
Correct.
There's all the animal and plant kingdom. There's all the aquatic kingdom, right? There's
two-legged, four-legged, winged. Yep.
Yes.
The whole thing.
So we're in a symbiotic environment where everything is reliant on everything else, and the whole planet is charged with energy and magnetism and movement. And this planet is spinning at an equatorial speed of 1,011 miles an hour. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah, no. That's the spin. And then we're orbiting the Earth at some other exponential speed, or orbiting the sun, sorry. And then the sun is in our spur of the Milky Way galaxy at some exponential speed. And then the Milky Way galaxy is moving through the dark void of dark matter and dark mass and the void of space at some other exponential speed. We are flying through the deep void of space. And I'm going to tell you that my belief is better than yours, and I'm going to heaven and you're not. Like,
isn't that ridiculous?
What is the fucking point of any of that? And I just, it's so, to me, it's just so ridiculous. Now, let me add one other thing, and then I'm going to shut up. Because because of my work on the pyramid, et cetera, and the historical impact, stuff like that.
Yes.
I've settled on an apparent conclusion, right? It appears to be this way, that like our species has been around 315,000 years, okay? Anatomically modern humans, back to the recent Moroccan skull of AMH, okay?
Right.
So we are to suppose that for 300 and let's call it 11,500 years, okay, 311,500 years, we're to suspect that this a theistic, human-like supernatural deity never inspired anybody to write anything down, okay?
Yeah.
There's a natural order of how we exist in the world, spirit, people, community, right? Symbiotic, right?
Yes.
And this exists for 311,500 years of our species, of our subspecies, okay? And then long about 1500 BC, Moses writes, and now this is the doctrine, okay?
Correct. But you know what, Dave? That was the doctrine for them. Well, that was what that particular group of people needed.
Okay, I'm with you. But that's not even my point. My point is not to even pick on doctrine. My point is to say that our natural existence for 300 up to today, all of the 315,000 years, that natural disposition does not need to be quantified in a text. It exists. It is.
I agree with you.
We're all in it, and it's natural. It's a part of being this higher order species with our senses and the energy of the planet and all the people and all the animal, plant, and oceanic kingdoms. Yeah. Like, it exists whether the writing existed or not. Okay.
Right. That was the biggest argument when the Europeans hit this continent. They just thought that all natives were savage because their truth was written on their heart. It wasn't written in a book.
Yeah.
And so they needed to educate them.
Yeah. Listen.
And what a disaster that's turned out to be. But that's a whole nother direction.
No, I know. But listen, my soul weeps just to even think about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Or like the Canadian boarding school stuff of the last couple of years.
Yeah. We got the same thing here in the United States, but I don't know if you noticed how quickly the mass media
disappears.
Put the lid on it. Oh yeah, they put the lid on it.
And it conflicts with this whitewash European Christian invader history. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, it just does. It conflicts with the history. So
I've had to do a lot of forgiving. And I think that was my first problem with my Catholic upbringing was, how can you do the things you've done in the name of Jesus and in the name of salvation and in the name of church? How can you do and behave in such an opposite manner of what you were given?
Yeah.
And so that was my first part of my journey, was to try to work through that and work that out. And okay, am I throwing God out with this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am
Yeah.
I going to throw out that whole concept? What am I doing here?
Yeah.
And so that, Bob and I, we journeyed together for many years until we finally were exhausted
Yeah.
with all of it.
Sure.
The hypocrisy,
Yeah.
the overwhelming meanness.
Yeah, well, you're trying to parse out the real essence of the spiritual connection
Yes,
from all of the rest of the bullshit.
right. You're
Okay.
hearing from the pulpit one set of doctrines, and you're seeing in the behavior the exact opposite.
Right, right. Sure,
And
sure,
it
sure, sure.
just didn't gel.
And it
It just
exhausts you.
didn't
It
gel.
exhausts you in your spiritual quest too. And you're like,
We
yeah,
were exhausted, and that's when we both pulled back and said, we just got to take a break here. We
yeah,
got to figure this out,
yeah, yeah.
And right at that time, we got involved in foster care, and
Hmm.
we really felt strongly about caring for children and trying to do something to better the planet and to better society,
Yeah, yeah.
We were so disappointed and disillusioned. So anyway, we got into foster care, and we got licensed with Michigan Indian Child Welfare after a couple of years.
Right.
And so that opened the door for me, because I laughingly tell the story that I thought I was the only Indian left on the planet.
Mm. Hmm.
Until I got involved with other Native communities and stuff. And let me tell you, nothing's perfect anywhere.
Sure, of
It's
course.
not perfect in their communities. We have the same social problems. We have the same dereliction of duty. We have, all of it, the
Yeah.
political crap, the whole nine yards.
Yeah.
But what I did find was they didn't proselytize. They didn't try to shove a doctrine down my throat. They just loved me and welcomed me to the ceremonies, and they let, in their way of staying, they let Giza Manidu, which is the all-loving creator, just take care of the rest.
Yeah.
And nobody ever tried to control anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, at that particular time in my life, I felt bad for Bob, because he was just kind of on his own.
Yeah, sure, sure.
You
sure.
know?
Yeah. Just on the periphery of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because he's not Native, and he feels in his spirit like so much has been taken from Native spirituality that he, as an outsider, would come and be respectful and supportive,
Sure.
but he would never take.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at in our life right now, and for some odd reason, we're 51 years into our marriage and everything's working. So
Yeah. You can't argue with results, right?
no, you can't. You really can't.
That's
And life isn't perfect.
Yeah.
It is not perfect. It's messy.
Yeah.
It's hurtful at times, but somehow or another, we find that fortitude and that connection to go on and to learn and to grow and to take personal responsibility and to make amends where you can make amends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So much of that is missing right now in our greater society. And I just decided that when I walk in the morning, I'm just going to put love and compassion out to the universe to counteract the anger and the hatred that's floating in the air.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Is it not the case? Each person, right? Each person needs to find their own spiritual motivation of love
Correct.
or care and peace or serenity, and then just share that,
Right. I think sometimes we are so brainwashed and so under some kind of a hypnosis that we just can't see the forest for the trees. We're like blinded by the light.
Yeah.
You know how a deer is in the headlights?
Ugh.
Things are so overwhelming right now that we're just stunned by it. And some of us just have to shut down, and then when we're ready, get up, shake the dust off, and go again.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Add water, rinse, repeat. Do it again.
yes, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
that reminds me of a joke Julie used to tell. I don't know if you remember this, but when we'd sit around the campfire, all of us, and she'd say, "Washy, washy, washy," in the new blue cheer.
Oh, geez.
And then
Was
she'd
that
go,
from an ad? Yeah.
"Yes," and she'd go, "Oh, it smells so good."
That's funny.
But she would talk about that, like washing out the terrible things of the
Oh,
day, or
yeah.
you know what I mean? She was so funny that way. I haven't got her sense of humor, but
Yeah, like it's spiritual house cleaning stuff, you know.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yep,
And then ultimately, yeah, sweep where you don't think you need to sweep. You're gonna find something in that dark corner over there, you know. So,
oh yes, oh yes,
I mean, there's a time to just take it easy, right? Have a marshmallow,
yes,
take a walk, pet a
yes,
dog, watch kids play at a park, right?
yeah,
There's so much time for that. And meditative time too, you know.
yeah. Bob is my balance in that because I don't know if you have noticed, but I am a very intense person.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love passionately. I sympathize passionately. I try to fix things passionately. I'm just I'm just I'm just enough, you know.
Yeah,
But
what are the kids these days, they call that extra, Robelle. They're like
yes,
Rebelle's
yes,
extra.
yes. And I know this about myself. But the wonderful part is my husband is the exact
Oh
opposite.
yeah, he's cool.
And
He's cool hand Luke, man.
oh, he sure is. And he'll say, Robelle, you cannot spiritualize everything. You're driving yourself crazy.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
he kind of pulls me back from the cliff and
yeah.
helps me to decompress and to get grounded and find my balance again.
Sure.
I'm grateful because I think I'd probably be in the loony bin by now.
Yeah, but okay, but listen to this right there. So you spin a top. If it's going fast enough, right? That
Yep.
that concentric energy, it's spinning perfectly.
Yes.
This is you. If it slows down just even a little bit, it starts to wobble. So
Yes.
you need to be
And
spinning
so I have to keep that spinning
at the
the
right
right.
harmony. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
fantastic. That's great. That's
And
great.
so when I tip, he gives me a little tweak.
Oh, I know. I know. That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is great.
And life is
But yeah,
great and all this. Yeah.
it is. We can't live life full bore all the time.
Yeah.
You know, in order to have the mountaintop experience, you've got to have the valley. You got to walk through the valley to climb the mountain.
Yeah.
And so many of us just have this unrealistic expectation that if we love enough, if we put enough of ourselves into a situation, if we pray hard enough, if we do this enough, it's going to fix everything. And that just isn't life. That isn't even realistic. We all have something to bring to the table.
Hmm.
And it's in sharing that something with others and them sharing that something with me. That's where we get healthy. But to think
Right.
that you can just be a one-man show and do it all yourself, that's not realistic.
Yeah, and that's easily called playing God, right?
Absolutely.
Or it's like if you just
Absolutely.
if you just took care of your little hula hoop, your little 3 by whatever space in the
Yeah.
universe, right? And if everybody did that, there'd be
Yeah.
harmony, right?
There would be harmony. My friend Donnie Shelfo from Berga, he always says, just remember, people, that when we leave this earth, we all get a 6-foot grave. Keep it humble.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think, boy, that's really putting it in perspective. And my other friend always said, I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul.
Yeah, right.
So keep it humble.
Sure, sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in any community, in any state, any town, whatever, there's people doing the same thing, right? So you just
Yes.
find your own tribe. And
Yes.
I'm not saying tribe in terms of excluding anybody. I'm just saying
Correct.
here's people who are on a path. You know, me and my people, we talk about this path toward humility, right?
Yes.
It's not a destination, it's just a direction, you know? So
It's a journey.
yeah. And you just find other people on the same path. That's all we're doing here,
That
right?
is what we're doing.
And there's people who are like,
And
no, I don't want to be on that path. And then there's people like, oh, you guys are on the same path. I can hang with you. You know, like you and
yes.
Bob balancing each other out, or, you know,
Yep.
friends or community or what
Yep.
it can be religious community. It can be, how about let's just look at like all the various groups, let's say social media groups. I like knitting, and here's
Yes.
500,000 people that like knitting, right?
Correct.
It's
Yep.
so super simple, you know? So,
It is. We make it complicated.
right, right. But
When
it's,
we put the unrealistic dogmas and the unrealistic expectations and my way or the highway thinking, we're the ones that muck it up and make it difficult.
yeah. And let me ask you this. Do you think, let me just in the broader sense, let's say even politically or socially or whatever, has anybody's spirituality been helped by money?
Been helped by, say that again, I'm not quite understanding.
Has money or not having money or being a billionaire, has any of that ever had an impact on someone's spiritual essence, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
I'm saying, so yeah. It's like, wait, here's a thing that exists outside the material world. It exists outside this materialism. It exists
Yes,
outside of money, et cetera, et cetera. There's zero barrier to entry, right?
correct.
So, or let me ask you this now. Let's say power, let's say influence, right?
Yes.
Has anybody's spirituality been helped by power or position or influence?
I see it as a detriment. I see it as a huge people who try to exert their influence, their money, and their power really have a tendency to destroy
Okay.
others
Okay.
in their path. It's almost like a snowplow coming through and pushing the snow back.
Yeah.
And where it lands, it lands.
Yeah.
But you know, it's I'm kind of going through this thing right now watching the mega churches.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I think I've read the scriptures and understand it enough to know that when Jesus sent his disciples out, he sent them out 2 by 2, and he told them not to take a purse and not even to take an extra cloak.
Right.
And the people whom receive you and you can fellowship with,
Yeah. They'll provide
those
everything. Yeah.
they will provide, and we do. We as human beings, we do that for each other.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
also
thought this,
foundational Muslim tradition also.
okay. Yeah, I don't know a lot about the Muslim tradition,
Yeah.
but yes, I think in any true form of spirituality, money, the love of money can be a huge downfall.
Yeah.
It causes all kinds of problems. I mean, I'm watching some of these mega preachers and their behavior and the mass amount of wealth and their huge salaries and 4 or 5 mansions around the globe and airplanes to get from one place to the other, not one plane, several. You
Right.
know, what that is so far removed from any kind of spirituality in my book. You know,
Mm-hmm.
now that's just me. This
Yeah.
is
Sure.
my
Sure. Sure.
opinion.
Yeah.
But that repulses me. The level of greed, the level of arrogance just, I find it repulsive.
Yeah, and listen, aside from let's say criticism, right? I think
Yeah.
that the importance of even identifying this stuff is that I can do all of my connections, all of my spiritual work without any of that stuff, right?
Yep.
So,
Me too.
yeah, I'm saying I think that's the biggest takeaway is get your
Yeah.
hands dirty and serve and da 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 da, and to do it
Yes.
regardless of money. People need our
Yep.
time. They don't need your money.
Right.
Or maybe they do need some money, right? So
Yep.
it's like this
And
summer,
I'm not opposed to giving money where I
yeah,
see it. Where I see a need, you know, Bob and I live generously, even though we're not real wealthy people. But I'm telling you, if I see a need, I'm going to meet that need.
sure,
I
sure,
don't care
sure,
what I have to do it. I'm
yeah,
going to meet that need. But when you start amassing huge amounts of wealth, and
hmm
what do you need that for? You can't take it
yeah,
with you when you go.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like here's the comparison. Like this is so funny, but like this summer, I was like I occasionally, now you don't see it so much in the city, but you get in the country, you see hitchhikers, right? So I
Yes.
know it was for years I would see hitchhikers on my birthday. I just for whatever it was crazy, but I was end up picking up a hitchhiker on my birthday, taking them where they need to go, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And then
Yeah.
in other scenarios too, if I was carrying cash, you know, and it was somebody that you can tell who's gonna use it for food, maybe, right, or something like that.
Right.
But it's like
Right.
I've had some policy of giving half of what I had in my pocket now, and I might have mentioned this before, but
Yeah.
it kept me from keeping too much cash in my pocket because I didn't want to give away.
Right.
You don't want to give away half of $1,000 in your backpack,
Right.
if you keep
Right.
40, you could give away 20 anyway. So it's all funny,
Yes.
but with it, and again, not to criticize, and certainly not even to criticize the people, but here's what
No.
I see some of the sort of greed, possessions, these kind of things. Like I'll pick up a hitchhiker in my van, and there was just this summer, it was actually a moving spiritual experience. But I picked up this woman.
Hmm.
When I drove past her, I didn't even know it was a woman or not, but they had a dog. And this was between like Gwyn and Escanaba, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was like,
Oh,
oh my
wow.
goodness. Anyway, so I pull over. Anyway, my point is this: I have this runs really good, looks super shitty work van. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got one of them.
So I have no problem with this dog piling in and what turns out to be this homeless lady.
Oh,
I with a towel. I got no problem with her sitting on my seats. Well, now
right.
put me in a Ferrari. All of a sudden, I don't want them in my car, right?
Right.
Well, that's
Yep.
okay. So where, with all this money and all these property and all these huge mega churches, where are the bunks for the homeless?
Right. That's my point exactly.
Staying on the property, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I mean, if maybe I'm wrong, send me some pictures
And
of the
no,
Olstein mega church and the homeless encampment and the bunks in the basement where they actually help people in serious need.
right. Right.
It's like, no,
That's my point
yeah.
exactly. Because if we really were doing what we've been commissioned to do, that they call it the Great Commission, there would not be homeless. There would not be the need for social services.
Well, when it comes to
We
base
would be that.
necessities, when it comes to base necessity stuff, right? But I just
Yes.
wanted to add that because there still would be need for social services, mental health care, things like
Yes.
that. Okay.
Right, right. But what I'm saying, if each of us was doing our part, we we could change the planet.
Mm-hmm.
I love John Denver,
Yeah.
and he was on the President's Commission for World Hunger in the 80s, and they had a 5-year plan to eliminate world hunger.
Yeah. A little
I want to
ambitious.
know
Right.
whatever happened to that plant? You know, where did it get buried? It got
Yeah.
buried. It got
Right.
buried.
Right. Yeah.
Anytime truth or anything that might equalize the playing field gets figured out, it gets buried.
Yeah. It gets snuffed out.
It gets snuffed out. And so that's been my biggest grievance, I think, in my life. And I finally had to come down to the point and say, you know what? You are one person. You are only one person.
Yeah.
You are a person within a circle, and that circle is within a circle, and that circle is within a circle. So the only thing that you can do is your part in your little corner of the garden.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when you go to your circle, you can share that with your circle. And then your circle will share that with the larger circle.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I'm at in my life, because for 35 years, you know, I worked in social work and addictions, and I'm exhausted. I'm 70 years old, and I know myself. I can't go back and do that now.
Yeah.
But I did it when I could.
Sure.
You know, I
Well,
did it when I could. And the person coming behind me, they're going to do it when they can, for as long as they can.
yeah.
And that's my hope for the future, is that we have enough people with a caring heart and some compassion that is willing to pick that up and go with it,
Yeah.
because we have to have that balance. The world has become so ugly.
Yeah. And let's touch on that real quick. So let's just say,
Yeah.
let's just call it service to others, right? This age
Yes.
old, right? And again, this would be one of these things which predates doctrine. We don't think there was
Correct.
service to others for 311,500 years. We think we were just
Right.
out raping and pillaging everything and everywhere, right?
Yep.
Our species would have never got to 1500 BC
Correct.
if that was the case, right? We would have killed each
Yeah.
other off completely. Anyway, which maybe we're close to doing that now. But anyway, not to belabor all the sins of the world, whatever. But okay, but let's touch on this. So let's call it service to others, okay?
Yes.
This is the key to good, wholesome life and self-image and self-respect and self-esteem and equilibrium and balance and symmetry with everyone and everyone on the planet. And also, how about just self-acceptance, right?
Yes. Loving yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But all I'm saying is I just want to call this out, because you try to help someone, let's say, whether they receive anything or not, whether they grow, change, or mature or not, I'm the one that benefits the most from any service to anybody, right?
You're right.
And I benefit in the fruits of my life and my own mind and my own heart, my own, right, calmness,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
patience, love, tolerance, this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So
And you know
they
what?
go
I
hand in
don't care
hand.
who I don't care who you're dealing with in life. They are a mirror to your deeper self.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really believe this, you know? And there has been times in my life that I didn't even realize the issues inside of myself. But then when I'm working, helping another soul
Uh-huh.
to try to find their balance and their peace and getting them what they need, there's a mirror that says, "Ooh, Robelle, you need to go inside and look at this. You really need to look at this."
Yeah, that's the spot.
And
That's spot it. You got it, right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
Oh, that's such a good one. That's so good. I would not be able to exist without spot it. You got it.
yep, I totally agree. Me either.
Yeah.
But to have the willingness to do that. Sometimes we're at a place in our life where the pain is so bad emotionally that we can't do that. And I think that during those times, the people around us are the ones that they do for us what we've been doing for others to help us through that dark time. And
Yeah.
we need each other.
Oh
We
goodness.
need
I
each
know,
other.
I know. I listen, I've been wearing out my counsel. I've been wearing them out for 9 months.
Well, sometimes we go through those periods,
I
you
even
know.
I apologize ahead of time. I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for calling you, but and I know I'm
Yeah.
whining, and I know I'm whining, but here's what's going on, you know. And
Yes.
so I just try to,
Yeah.
I know it's too much. I know.
See, I tried to be the person that never, well, I grew up in a home where I was the oldest child. It was my job to anticipate each person's needs in the
Right,
home,
right.
be cued into their emotions,
Okay.
be the peacemaker,
Yeah.
and take care of everything. But by God, don't you dare say I'm sad or shed a tear. I'll give you something to cry for.
Right. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Those 50s parents and grandparents,
Uh-huh.
what
Yes,
are
that was the age. Everybody was raised that way back then. But does that make it right?
oh
No.
goodness,
When we
no.
know better, we do better.
Sure, sure, sure. Hey, let me ask you this. So mom was the oldest of 8 kids also. Was
Yes.
Julie the oldest in her
Let me
family?
think about that. No, she wasn't.
Okay. Well,
I believe
obviously,
Ronnie was.
obviously she's
She
throwing
was the
rolls.
oldest girl, though. She was the old. No, she was not the oldest. She was the youngest girl.
Of course, right, that's what
So
I'm
she
saying. Her
was,
personality, the attention
yeah,
stuff. Obviously, she's
yeah.
the youngest. But I'm saying you and my mom as the oldest. It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So,
Her and I talked about that really often because back in the day when we were being raised in, the late 50s, early 60s, you as the oldest child, you took over a lot of the mothering
yeah,
roles
yeah, surrogate
when she
parents. Yeah,
wasn't at home.
yeah.
Yes. And so you become super responsible, and you also kind of get this attitude about nothing I do is good enough.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just
sure.
not good enough.
Yeah, yeah. That
you know
well, yeah, like almost a martyr complex, things like that.
yes.
Sure, yeah.
Yep, victim, to take a victim stance. I never good enough, like
Oh right,
Eeyore.
right, right. Sure, sure, sure. Oh boy, I've said this.
So
I've said this 100 times, even recently.
yeah.
It's like don't get between somebody and their victim status. Like you're gonna get
Oh, right.
crushed. You will get
Yeah.
crushed because
Yeah.
people
And
hold
you
on to
know
that.
what I
Go ahead.
did is I would commit myself to trying to helping people who were in that victim stance who absolutely did not want to get out of it.
Oh,
And they would get mad at you if you really
expose the
started pushing
wound.
the
Yeah, yeah.
envelope.
Right, sure. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm just learning about boundaries. I mean, I worked 35 years in social work and addictions counseling,
Hmm.
and at 66 years old, woke up and said, "How come I never noticed that I needed boundaries
Oh
and that it was
goodness.
okay to
Yeah,
have them?"
for sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So I'm still working on that.
Yeah, you're still in the cooker, a work in
I
progress.
am in the cooker. Yes.
How do you feel about
Yeah.
the time? Do you want to talk some more?
I'm fine if you are,
Oh
or
yeah.
if you think we're closing it down.
No, let's
That's,
go another 20 minutes or so. Let's do another 20 minutes.
okay.
The
Okay.
So tell me some stories. So okay, here's one other thing about my mom also. And I knew
Hmm.
this. I knew this and saw this even let's say at 18 like when I got sober whatever. We essentially started over with our relationship.
Yes.
And I did the same thing with my dad and the world, right? I was like, okay, wait,
Yes.
here's what I'm accepting, here's what I'm not accepting, right? So,
Yep.
but what I understood about my mom as we got closer, and I don't even know the length of time here, essentially, but what did we say, 9 years? So give or take, I don't know, 26 years, 25 years? 20,
Yeah.
25 years, my sobriety, building this relationship with my mom, what I came to understand was essentially having participated in raising 7 other children, right? By the time she gets
Yep.
married and we have 4 kids and then 5 kids, she was
Yeah.
already done with kids by the time she had her first kid. Like,
She was exhausted.
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And again, no fault of her own, no blame, zero. But like,
Right.
how easy is it to understand? It's like, yeah, I need some alone time, right?
Yeah.
And then us and my brothers and sister, and particularly me and my older brother, just
Uh-huh.
hellions, right?
Well, I have to tell you, when your mom told the story, she never told it that way. You
Okay,
guys were
well,
her angels. All four of her kids were absolute angels, and along came Christopher, and
yeah.
he was the king of the
Oh
angels.
God, and he was such a spoiled little bitch too. Love you, buddy. But anyhow,
Oh
okay.
my goodness.
Well,
But your mom got me through a horrible time in my life because, as you know, we adopted one of our foster children,
okay,
and she
right.
was the gift that kept on giving, and we went on to adopt two of her children. But anyway, to make the long story short, we were up at Abenuji at a women's retreat, and I got a call from Bob saying that our daughter had run away, and she was 11 at
Mm,
the time,
mm-hmm.
and we were like, oh, we were just devastated. And I said, do you want me to come home? He said, there's nothing you can do. The police are looking, and we're doing everything we can, and there's no reason for you to come home.
Right.
So I was like still thinking maybe I should go home. The mom thing kicked in. But your mom sat down and she shared a particularly painful experience that she went through with her only daughter, and how it all worked out in the end, and things turned around, and
Yeah.
they had such a beautiful relationship. Anyhow, it really encouraged me because up until then, I thought I was the only one. I must have really done something wrong. I must have really screwed this up. My daughter hates me. She ran away, you know. But in her sharing her heartache and the joy afterwards really helped me through that painful, painful experience.
Yeah.
And within an hour of her sitting with me, and I was undone, sobbing and crying, and she just sat patiently and held my hand and talked me through it. And then Bob called and they found our kids. So
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
all worked out. But I guess what I'm telling you is that there were so many experiences in our lives that were so similar when she and I would talk.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody could possibly understand what her friendship meant to me. She was more like a sister to me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I can tell you there ain't a day that goes by that I don't talk to her.
Yeah.
What do you think about this, Diane? What do you think about this, Yeah, she was near and dear to my heart. That's all I can say. But
Yeah.
there's another experience. We would go to the mountains.
Yeah, yeah.
Your
Tell me about
mom,
this. Just frame this all. You guys would go to Colorado, and
yes.
you hooked up with the John Denver family at this annual celebration type thing.
Well, we were in the same town, but
Yeah.
we were there distinctly. You know what I mean?
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
So, but your mom and I, we could go up into the mountains, and she was content to sit by the pond and just soak it in. Where I was like the Energizer Bunny, my meditations are always moving. I'm always on the
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
And so I took this path and I went up. I started out on the path, and somehow or another I got discombobulated. I wanted to get up into the mountains to this beautiful lake. And I got off the beaten path. So I'm climbing up these ancient stones.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while I'm climbing, I had on tennis shoes, and I'm climbing using my hands, to get through.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing this funny noise, and I'm thinking it sounded sort of like cicadas. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
they kind of,
Locusts. Yeah.
yeah. So I did this climb. I got all the way up there and went by the lake, and oh, it was beautiful. Then I found my path and I came back down. And when I came down, she kind of met me on the path. And I said, Diane, what is that funny noise? It's something I'm not familiar with. She says, oh, those are rattlesnakes.
Oh my goodness.
And I climbed up. It must have been at least a good half of a mile on those stones
Oh.
with bare hands and tennis shoes,
Right.
I mean, that's grace. Don't you think that's grace?
Well, yeah.
That
Well.
in
Yeah.
my naiveness, there's grace.
Sure. Yeah. Well, God takes care of what, babies, drunks, and
Yes.
orphans. What is that? How does that go?
Yeah.
And women walking on stones with rattlesnakes.
Yep.
Wow.
But what I'm saying to you is we could be in the same area and yet experience it
Oh,
so
yeah.
vastly differently,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think.
And
Yeah.
yet,
I suppose I got both of those things. I can sit and meditate. There's been times where I was like, oh, this is such a good time for a nap. And I will sit there meditating for 2 hours, just breathing.
yes.
Or I'll sit in
Yep.
yoga and it's like, I don't even need to move my body. Let me just breathe, So,
Yes.
but then all other times for you, it's like, oh, I need to get the blood moving.
Yeah, I'm like the Energizer Bunny, and Bob will say, can't you ever just sit still?
Oh, goodness,
Because
that's
I've
funny.
got this nervous energy, and I do my best praying and my best meditation when I'm walking in the woods,
Yeah.
That's my time. That's my cathedral.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of that, I've got this practice that I try to do every now and then, but
Uh-huh.
particularly if I'm somewhere remote. It's like, think of the concept. How many times have you stepped, let's say, off a path? How many times have you stepped in a unique footprint on this planet where no one else has ever stepped, right?
Boy, that's a big thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
And listen, you've probably done it 1,000 times, 100,000 times. But think of this. How many people don't? How many people never step in a unique place on the planet where only their footprint has been? Right?
That's true. That is very true.
But all you got to do is park your car and just walk out into the woods, right?
Yes.
For sure, you're bound to be where someone else has never stepped. And
Yep.
that's just a great feeling.
It is a great feeling because even when you do that, you still feel a certain connectedness with all that's around you,
Yeah.
It's very reverential. It's a very sacred feeling for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for other people. It might not mean nothing to them or anything to them, but to me, that is so sacred. Just like one day I went walking across the road where I go down in the woods in the valley, and I'm walking back and I see these wolf tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And most people would be frightened and want to run.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm walking where this wolf walked. And I'm looking at his tracks.
Right.
And they're mammoth and they're beautiful. I didn't feel fearful at all. I'm more fearful when I walk into a crowded building because I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always, when I walk into a crowded building now, I'm looking for the nearest exit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm formulating a plan in my head. What if somebody opens fire? Where am I going? Where's the safest place? What's the nearest exit? How can I get out of here?
Yeah.
And I've really had to deal with that in the last year because it got pretty bad to where I didn't want to go in public.
Right.
I didn't want to be around people. And you can't live your life that way either because we need each other. We all need to learn and to grow. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and okay, it's often people will talk about the differences between solitude or loneliness or whatever, right? So
yeah.
when does your yeah. So if you go out, what's your limit? What's your limit before you gotta go sit down and have coffee with Bob and go, wow, that was a really great time by myself,
Um, well, I go out every morning
right?
and sometimes I can go longer depending on the weather. And sometimes I kind of just lose myself in the moment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
don't pay
so,
attention to the clock or whatever
right,
calendars.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it varies every time I go out, and it varies the circumstances going on in my life and what it takes for me to get back in balance and to find that groove so
yeah,
that I can get my day on. So yeah, I think it's different every time.
sure. Okay.
Yep. But Bob and I, funny you should say, sit down and have coffee. We have a routine. We wake up really early, both of us, usually 4:30 in the morning,
Yeah,
and we sit for 3 hours in bed just talking
yeah,
and sharing coffee.
right.
And Bob and I talk a lot about spiritual things
Yeah,
and
yeah,
about different things that we're seeing out in the world and how we approach that without judgment, not making judgments that,
yeah.
oh, we're so right and they're so
Yeah,
wrong.
it's just like,
No,
what does this
nothing like
mean to
that.
me? What does this mean to me? What's
Yes.
a healthy perspective to have on whatever the
Yeah.
topic is, right?
And where do I fit in
Sure.
that dialogue?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
So what I'm saying is that 3 hours of intimacy sets the tone for the day.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Good. Okay. Well, people need to get up earlier.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there is something about greeting the sun when it comes up, and that's something else. We have just the most beautiful view of the sun coming up,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
But
when we look out.
these days they call it, well, it's obviously the sun bathing or nature bathing, right? But
Yeah,
they also call it grounding. Okay, it's like take
yes,
your shoes off, get your feet in the dirt. Da da da. There's some electromagnetic transformations that happen with grounding also.
yeah.
But it's
Sometimes when I'm in circle, I will be in certain circles, and depending, all of a sudden I'll get this little still small voice within that says, "Take your shoes off,"
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I will.
yeah. Of
And
course, because
and
you're listening. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and I know I look silly when I do it, but you know what? I've learned to tune into that still small voice.
yeah.
And when it says something, whether it's a warning or whether it's
Affirmation. Yeah.
affirmation and positive things, I listen. I
Hmm.
really, really tune in and listen.
Well, we got two ears and one mouth, right?
Yes.
So there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could
You know,
just, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's something that's really opposite of society in general is in Native communities, silence. They call it entering into the silence. And sometimes you can be sitting together and you don't have to exchange a word, and it's the best visit in the world. And your
Yeah,
mom and I were like that. She was an early riser. I was an early riser. We would get up, we would sit with our cup of coffee and watch the sun come up. We didn't even have to talk.
yeah,
It was just such an experience.
yeah. I've had many fishing partners over the years, right?
Hmm.
And for real, I can be in a boat with somebody for a week and just not say much. We're just
Right.
in the present, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
One time we were at Barriga Powwow, Bob and I, and our kids were little. This was way long time ago, probably 40 years, and they
yeah,
were little. And we were sitting there, and this gentleman and his wife from Sault Ste. Marie, um, they came over and sat down at our campsite, and we exchanged, just pleasantries. How are you? This, that. And they sat with us for like 45 minutes.
yeah.
And then they stood up and said, "Well, come on, kids, we got to go get ready for grand entry." And
Sure.
they walked away, and I looked at Linda was sitting with us. I said, "Well, that was a nice visit." And Bob looks at us. He says, "Visit? Nobody said a word."
Oh goodness, that's funny. That's funny.
And now that he's older, he really appreciates that
People
kind of
not
visit.
talking,
But
or him not having to talk. Yeah, yeah.
him not having to talk.
Hey,
So
so let
anyway,
tell me. Okay, so let's end on this. Let's end on this one. So the one
okay.
year I came to Barriga, Jen was there,
Yep.
you were there, Mom was there, and um, I don't know if you remember specifically that year or whatever, but tell us more about community powwows, Barriga specifically, like,
Yep.
and then I want to interject on my takeaway, just
Okay.
because this was much like just me visiting the community, right? To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to Rephetic, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history